Hi everyone and welcome along. Now we may be in autumn but there are still loads of lovely flowers growing out there, and my mother-in-law picked these for me from her own garden, so we're going to paint fuchsias today. Grab your paints and let's get started. Right, here we have a rather perfect little fuchsia branch showing us the open flower as well as the buds in differing sizes. So I'm going to pop that to one side. And we're going to draw, I might draw it this way actually. There we go. Draw a little curve. And then off that curve, I'm going to have some little lines that show me, first off, these longer ones here are actually our leaves growing out at parallel points, and then the curve coming over, so those ones have got little buds up here coming off, and then some lines for our actual little buds there. So when you're drawing, well, at least when you're doing painting in the style that I like to teach, I just put in those lines instead of full sort of leaf shapes or petal and flower shapes, just because you don't want to have too much heavy pencil going on. Now, the other thing that I would recommend for anyone at home painting along is you now give your pencil a little bit of a rub out, because you want to get it as faint as possible before starting painting. Now I'm just waking up alizarin crimson, burnt sienna here. Those are going to be two key colours, especially for our stem, because you can see there's an awful lot of the red colour in the stem. Then sap green down here. And we'll also get some other pinky tones in there. We've got an amazing purple in the flower that just pokes out underneath. And I'm going to use some of my lovely blue tones. We've got cobalt blue deep here, just waking that one up, and French ultramarine blue is another great blue that I use a lot. And then last off, permanent rose is a fantastic pink colour that I use a lot when I'm flower painting. It's just a little bit lighter and fresher than alizarin crimson. But now we've got our paints mixed up, I can now get started. I'm going to begin with my size 0 brush, and what I've done is I've mixed my key colours, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, sap green, but I've also added a tiny bit of yellow ochre, and it's created a wonderful stem colour that I think is going to work really nicely. So I'm going to start at the bottom with my size 0 brush, and each time we meet a little leaf junction, I'm just going to pop in a little bit of alizarin crimson, and the stem sort of thickens a little bit each time we meet a leaf, a bit like bamboo does. It's quite a sturdy, thick stem, so it's not one of the ones that we paint in with a rigger brush or a really, really teeny tiny brush. So it's going to get a little bit slimmer as we travel up, and I think the alizarin crimson becomes actually a little bit more evident. And at this point the stem kind of branches off in two, so we'll carry on. There we go. So it's got slimmer and slimmer and more alizarin crimson. And we're just going to leave those little bits for when we start putting in our actual flowers. But now I can place in some leaves. I'm going to use my size 2 brush. The leaves are fairly smooth edge. There's a very subtle little serrated point on them, but I think I'm going to paint them first as smooth-sided leaves, and then we can always add something. And you also can see a very distinct alizarin crimson vein up the centre of the leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint these leaves in first and leave a tiny amount of unpainted space in the middle. I think actually I want a slightly larger brush, so I'm going to go for size 4, and I'm going to follow the central pencil line, and now I'm going to just flick the little tip of the brush and just because I like to, I'm going to put the tiniest bit of darker colour. Okay, I'm going to fill in the rest of the leaves and then we'll carry on to the next bit. Right, I've pulled apart the different sections. For the sake of art, I'm very sorry to the plant, but I felt it was going to be much easier to show you the different elements of it once deconstructed. So we've got all our leaves painted in now, and you can see they get much smaller and simpler towards the top. I'm now going to use my rigger brush, and I'm going to take that initial stem mix that we had here, and I am going to paint in some little branches for our flowers. I'm going to use my size 0 brush, and I actually think a little bit of green gold would be good here, mixed in with some of the sap green, just to get this lovely colour. So I'm going to sort of decide where my sort of key flowers are going to be. I think we're going to have the main one, we're going to have this one here. So I'm just going to mark that in. So the little bell shape, and then the petals that come out. And this one here can be a nice little, well, actually no, we'll do a large one. Just coming in behind that leaf there. It's important that the line of your stem sort of follows the line of the flower itself, and then up here just these very little ones. There we go, so that's drawn in, and now we can start painting. So I've got size 0 brush, bit of green gold and sap green mixed together, and I'm going to begin by painting in just the sort of outline of that shape, and then just going to come down, and we can see we've got the flower. The main flower is going to overlap, so we're just going to leave a little bit of unpainted space, but I'm just using the green colour to draw up, and we're also going to add a little bit of alizarin crimson in there as well, just a little dab. And I'm going to do the green on the others. You can see that the colour there is a lot deeper and darker on the flower once it's actually opened, so we'll just paint these in and then we'll get going with the next stages. All our buds have been marked in, and I'm going to now get on with the colours. Now my water is looking a bit murky, so I'm going to switch it over for a nice fresh one, and I'm going to begin with actually some permanent rose, because we're going to work our way into the alizarin crimson. Now when I drew this, I didn't include the fact that there is like a second bulbous shape. I just want to use the unpainted space to just help me sort of create the sense of there being roundness and shine and also texture on this. So now come in with alizarin crimson and just sort of start to get a little bit of a bit more colour, bit of texture, starting on the edges whilst it's still a little bit wet, and you can sort of adjust the shape if you want. In fact, I'm going to make this a bit broader. There we go. And now I'm going to use the alizarin crimson to help create those lovely sort of ridges on the shape. And you can see that I'm very close to a leaf, and I'm actually going to paint right over the top of it. Because I'm using fairly concentrated alizarin crimson, it means that I can actually paint over the top and it not be the end of the world. I mean, we'll be coming back to do bits of detail and things, we'll be adding shadow and stuff, but I think that is the one challenge of this kind of piece, is that these little shapes do sort of hang down quite a lot further than when you're first drawing in your shapes. Okay, so I'm now going to do that again. So you're starting with permanent rose, create the shape, and then a little bit of unpainted space. And then I'm not waiting too long for it to dry, because I want to get that blend. And now I'm just painting the outer edges with alizarin crimson. Now we're going to turn our attentions to the main flower. So I first need to create a colour that sort of captures that browny, alizarin-y, crimson-y colour at the top. So that's exactly what I've done, burnt sienna and alizarin crimson together. And I'm actually going to send it up the stem a little bit as well. I'm now going to just take a 4/10 brush and just add a little bit of alizarin crimson into that. Right, now we move down into our regular permanent rose section, which we then add alizarin crimson into. I've gone down to a 2/10 brush here, just because I want to have as much control as possible. It's still a very shiny bit, so we want to keep little bits of unpainted space. And then now we're going to fan out into the petals. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add the alizarin crimson detail there whilst it's still wet. And I've gone up to my size 0 again. It's just easier to start light in watercolour and then add in your darker tones, because the lovely blends that happen just look so lovely. So there are 4 petals, and depending on how you paint it, you might see all 4, you might just see 3. And then I'm going to paint that last one, just poking out the back there. I think for me I can see 3. And I've painted that first one so that I could give it a little bit of drying time whilst I painted that one, meaning that that third one I can paint right up next to this one and have less chance of the colours bleeding into one another. And you'll also see that I've left it really quite sort of light and dilute at this end. The other thing is now I can see how far down this little bud here can come. Lovely. Now I'm also going to just place in the long filaments before I place in the purple petals. for the purple, I'm going to mix my blue and my permanent rose, so cobalt blue and permanent rose instantly makes a lovely purple, but it's quite light and I want it to be a bit more dark and inky. So now I'll place in some French ultramarine blue, and that's definitely more like it. And now we're going to paint in the petals. Now another bit of dissection going to happen. Look at that. I bet none of you realised that's what the petal looked like underneath. That's really, really cool. We're not going to see a huge amount of that, but we will see a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by painting in just some nice permanent rose up into the corner there. Quite dilute. And now I'm going to edge it with this dark purple colour. And now just bring that colour in. Now everything's been painted in the sort of basic wash stage. We're going to let it all dry and then we're going to add some detail. The next step is beginning to add some detail. So I've just painted in some leaf lines with my rigger brush in alizarin crimson, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did that with the next ones. So, oh, rigger brush, wrong brush. Alizarin crimson, and I'm just going to take the line and sort of follow along the central vein of the leaf, and then just really, really lightly. I do sell the rigger brushes in my web shop if you want to get yourself one. Just turn it around so I can do this leaf. And that little bit of unpainted space then turns into a bit of a sort of bit of shine, just a bit of extra little detail. And then I'm just sort of adding a little bit of the original stem mix just to the little junction there. So we're going to paint in all our leaves and then get some more detail. To get last bits of detail in, I've mixed some alizarin crimson with some Payne's grey just to give me a little bit more of a sort of low light kind of colour. And oh, the dogs are barking. Do excuse the noise. Ant has just popped out. So we have a big like household quiet time when I'm filming, but the dogs are normally very good. I don't know how easy it is to hear them, but I'm just going to keep painting. There we go. So by adding in this low light colour, it helps create a sense of even more shape and contrast on the bud, and team that with the unpainted space highlights, and you get a really nice rounded bud. There we go. And now I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's Grey to the purpley colour that we were using. And add some to that. So it's quite an interesting notion of sometimes with shadow, actually what you want to do, instead of just coming in with pure sort of grey, blue and brown mixed together, sometimes it can be a good idea to mix it in to the colour you've just been using. And I can do things like this and actually create a new petal. And add just a little bit there. Now we're very nearly done, so what I'm going to do, let it dry, rub out the pencil entirely, and then we're just going to add a little bit of shadow to finish. So I'm now just using my regular usual mix of burnt sienna and Payne's Grey just to add a sweep of shadow mix. I have to keep on mixing more because you get through a lot of it when it's these sweeps of shadow mix. A little on the leaves, particularly where the leaf sort of sits in a place where it is actually going to have something over the top of it. And then as you go further up the stem, so I'm just using it to, there we go underneath. And there we have a lovely autumnal fuchsia. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons for their support, because that support enables us to keep creating videos that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you got on with that one. And if you never want to miss another video, then hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!